I'm going to use a philosopher or critic, if you will, who's out of fashion right now, because criticism has fashion too. Whether somebody said something useful or not, it doesn't matter if they're out of fashion, they are. But Kenneth Burke, who said man is the symbol-using, misusing animal. All right. Generator of belief systems, all right, and of the principle of the negative, meaning in terms of language, we describe what is by what is not. Goaded by a spirit of hierarchy and rotten with perfection. And what some of the things that were said, for instance, colleague over here was speaking of good precedes being. This is it's a wonderful, noble idea, but and I've been known as a malpracticing Catholic, but it can be very dangerous, because what it can do is it can allow man for the purpose of improving humanity, it is necessary to exterminate them. There are moments like this where if we do forget the ever precarious balance between a value system and the animal, all right, then we are in danger of imposing either one construct over the other, in the terms of behavioralism, where the animal was overemphasized, all right? Sheer process. You even see it in the arts. What we see is a dangerous overstatement of those facts to the detriment of values, to people being looked at with social Darwinism, for people being looked upon as nothing but, and it was a misuse of Darwinism, all right, because of this symbol-using ability or misusing ability that we have. All right, so I'm concerned with that as a creative writer. I'm concerned with that at the university level, where ethics can be used as a form of tyranny. All right, in this sense, take a concrete example. When I worked in the factory, I had quite a few. They had used women in finish grinding because they had better small hand coordination, and they were constantly sexually harassed by the foreman. All right. One woman came up to me, and she was from Nicaragua, and she says, I'm being harassed. And I sat back, and I had gone to 2 or 3 cases, and I had watched the women sometimes win and still lose, because they were fired on technicalities. Suddenly, the ethical law was enforced on them in such a way, and so many laws are made that at any time they want to get rid of an employee, they just impose the law, and it all looks ethical. So I said to her, you know, if we fight this through the usual sexual harassment process, you're going to win, but you're going to lose. I go, but I saw you slip in oil the other day, and I've seen you favor your back. Does your back hurt? She goes, yes. And I go, and right now the company's very worried because OSHA has been in here several times. And the one thing they're really frightened of is a suit. And I go, this is pragmatic. I go, but why don't we go and I'll talk to them about your back, all right? And we'll talk to them about the possibility of a suit. And then we'll talk about the foreman that's been harassing you, who runs that department. He never went near her again, and 3 months later he was fired. Now somebody that's a purist would say I was being unethical. I was putting being ahead of the good at that moment for the sake of the good, all right? Now I have to be careful of that because that can be dangerous too, because then we're talking about absolute contingency, where you have a right to change the rules whenever you want to. And that's where David's necessary authority comes in. I did it within the realm of the rules, all right? We have to remember that rules are made to be broken judiciously, and they are made to be questioned. Certainty should be questioned, not necessarily a value system always. Perpetual questioning of a value system does paralyze us. Sometimes, though, to take a slight exception to David, I believe that paralysis is good. Again, using a line from Kenneth Burke, who's out of fashion, to the good of pure warfare, meaning that if you spend a lot of time talking and arguing about warfare and become obsessed with the conversation about warfare, you don't have warfare. You do paralyze. All right? So one of the values of ethics is that all this conversation acts as a sort of aesthetic delay to inevitable imposing of certainties. All right? A concrete example at a university would be we're afraid of plagiarism. A department suddenly wants to get tough. We have to show we're really dead set against plagiarism. And I knew this has happened with the student. The student goes away, his grandfather has died. He goes to a memorial service. He does not hear the professor say that this 2-page paper needs a works cited page. He brings in the paper. He gives credit. He quotes and gives the page numbers, but he does not give a works cited page. At this moment, this department is looking, all right, to show they are tough on plagiarism. So they technically accuse the student of plagiarism. Right? He has cited, he has given credit for the intellectual currency, he has given credit for words, but he has not had a works cited page. Granted, he should be marked down for not having the works cited page. Now, the day that it was said as an afterthought that there should be a works cited page for a 2-page paper, because there had not been that said previously, he is told, oh, well, I mean, in passing, it's told the works cited page. He's not there that day because he's at his grandfather's memorial. He explains that, but at this particular moment in the history of that particular moral system, it behooves them to hammer the law down on him because they're not really going to get rid of him. They're not going to fail him. What they're going to do is use him as an example of how they're tough on plagiarism. Because he was frightened. I said, they're not going to do that. What they want to do is use it. He says, they want me to sign a piece of paper that says, I plagiarized. All right? And it will be a warning. And it will be expunged from my record eventually. I go, this is the deal making. All right? As an old union negotiator, this is practical ethics. What they're saying is, what we'll get out of this is that we'll look like we're tough on plagiarism. And what you'll get out of this is you won't be booted from the university, and you won't fail. So win-win in that sense. Now, I could look at it, and students were horrified. Some students said, oh, he should go to the wall with this. He should this and that. You know, go to the barricades. All right? But as a pragmatist, I said, if he goes to the barricades, he wins and he loses. And so does the university, because they're right. You should be tough on plagiarism. And intellectual ideas should be sacrosanct. So, but this is the problem, and I think we have to constantly weigh this and that you speak of. The and between being and good, all right? Because the and to me represents the brackish syntax, the place where the water is neither salt nor fresh, all right? And in this place where absolutism or relativism are losing their definitions, where they're destabilizing, Derrida speaks of this. The gaps are infinite, all right? In this place is where any true ethical or intellectual integrity lies. You have to constantly remember that. And this is important to me in creative writing. And it's important to me because I see the schism between creative writing and so-called literary studies, which is fallacious. I mean, I see students in creative writing who don't know Whitman. They don't know the sources of their own being. And so I make a corrective, and I make sure they read When Lilacs Last by the Dooryard Bloomed. I make sure that they know their literature. I see it with theorists who, although they can theorize, extemporize on a piece of text, they have completely forgotten the aesthetic merits of it. And all of this, I think, is based on the wonderful fecundity of what my colleagues have said so far. This constant precarious balance, all right, between being and the good. And we're never sure, because the Bible, what does the Bible say? Better a live dog than a dead lion. It's a form of pragmatism. All right. At other points, you know, they're exalting a man dying for the sake of a belief such as I won't eat pork. All right. This is a decision, a constant decision with infinite complexities. And we must be aware of how institutions, because the sign of tyranny is to make a lot of laws and then arbitrarily impose them when you need to look good. And that's called political correctness, which is really scary right now. And that's the danger of a value system, all right? Where for the sake of protecting animal rights, you end up butchering an animal. Or for the sake of proving plagiarism, you end up terrorizing a student who's just lost his grandfather. This is evil. So that by ethical standards we can commit evil. We should always be honest about that.
All right.